Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and really excited to be up after John because a fun fact is we're cousins and we live about 10 miles down the road from each other. And so I always enjoy listening to John and especially today. So thanks for having me. And I hope you all enjoy this session, kind of switching from maybe the analytical part that John was talking about, maybe now to a little bit more creative, fun aspects of marketing and ranching. So I'm learning this. When I flash this logo on the screen, what first comes to mind? Maybe expensive, maybe engagement, high-end, luxury, right? How about this logo? Totally the opposite, yes. Okay, how about this? Any Hobby Lobby fans? Yeah, I totally love Hobby Lobby. So again, I mean, for me, when I think of Hobby Lobby, I think fun, creative, gives back, it's the brand I love. How about this one? Maybe not so much, right? Okay, what about when I flash this up on the screen? What comes to mind here? It's not a brand, it's not a logo, but it's definitely a brand, right? This is an outstanding Angus bull. And so as soon as I see that, I'm sure with you as ranchers, there's immediately lots of positive things that come to mind just by seeing a black-hided animal. And how about this? Do any of y'all know what these are? This is a Brahmin that's actually bred out of John's bull and mine and my husband's cow. And so again, maybe different things come to mind than what you first saw when you saw that great Angus bull up there, but again, still a beef animal. And for those of you that are not as familiar with it, you probably for sure had some adjectives that came into mind. So I'm Rachel Cutrer, and my point of sharing all those was that everything that basically we do in ranching can revolve around branding and consumer perception and industry perception. These are a few of my brands. Patrick introduced me. I started Ranch House Designs in 1999, which we are a marketing firm that serves primarily ranchers, but a lot of ranchers, ag businesses, and other entities like that. My husband and I also raise registered Brahman cattle. Brahman Country Genetics is a global semen and embryo company that we operate where we ship Brahman genetics all around the world. And then a couple of years ago, we started Brahman Country Beef, which is a farm-to-table beef brand that serves 100% Brahman cattle, but also great choice. So putting that out there. And then that's my husband and I and our two precious daughters that are here with us in the back attending. It's their first BIF, and they're really excited. And then I just want to quickly show some of the cattle that my husband and I raise, because I think sharing this can help give you maybe a little bit of connection that while my specialty is marketing and creative things, really my passion is cattle breeding and ranching. And so just like each of you, this is what I love. So over the last 20 years, I've had the honor of working with over 2,500 different ranches, brands, ag businesses, primarily that focus in the agriculture industry. And here are just some of my favorites that I've worked with over the last 20 years. Probably recognize some of those too. But 2 years ago, my husband and I had the opportunity to start our new entity of Cutrer completely from scratch without a lot of notice. And we owned cattle and we had been breeding cattle for 10 years, but we had this opportunity come up to go out on our own, start our new name. And so that was really, for me, a chance of putting to practice all those 20 years that I had worked for other ranches in building their brand. Now it was time really for the rubber to meet the road and put it into practice where it hit me the most, which is in my own home. And so I kind of like to share this background. When this event happened a couple of years ago, what we did not have. We did not have a name. We didn't have a brand, like a brand to put on our cattle. We didn't have a logo. We didn't have any type of succession planning turnover of this is going to be a transition period where you're going to start your new brand on this date. We had zero social media following, nothing, right? So not a lot of things working for us. But what we did have is we had each other. We had the ability to prioritize and make a plan in our head. We had the drive to be successful. We also had a great team with us at Ranch House Designs. And We had a lot of friends, experience, and our own faith. Oh, and I want to throw in, we also were having an online sale in less than 30 days. So I jokingly shared that if anybody needed someone who could give a speech on how to build a brand and have an online sale in less than a month, that I'm your girl. And then, well, here we are. So going through all of that really taught me a lot of things. But to put it in terms that I think a lot of ranchers can use, I really feel like building a brand is a lot like building a set of working pins. Have any of y'all built that on your ranch? So if you're in ranching, you probably fall into one of these three categories. Everybody needs a set of working pins, right? You may have an old brand or an old set of working pins that were there on the property when you inherited it. It could be that your great-great-grandpa built it, and maybe it's really old and it doesn't have the most fanciest equipment, but it still works great and it serves you every day. Maybe you have a brand that you inherited, maybe from your great-grandparents or your parents or something, and it's good, but it needs a little improvement. We bought a piece of property like that a couple of years ago, and it had a set of pins on it, but the gates didn't work, and it took us a little while to get that functioning, but it does function now. Or maybe you're like us, and you have a new brand that you're building completely from scratch, and you have the complete flexibility to get the best equipment or design it however you want. And so whatever set of pins you've got, it's going to take some work, right? I shared this picture. This was us. The caption was, "This is one of the hardest days we've worked in years." And it was us when we decided we could build our own set of pins and pour a foundation and all that ourselves in 90 or 100-degree weather in July 2nd. And we literally thought we were going to die after we got into this. But at the end of the project, we were very proud of it, right? And every time we go out there now to those pins, we think about all the work that went into it. And so building your brand is going to be challenging. It's not easy. It's not going to just be an overnight thing, but it's going to be so worth it. So I also share that because no matter where you are in your branding or ranching story, I think there's room for improvement in every brand that's out there. Anybody know the Brown Ranch? Are they in here? One of my favorite ranching families. You look at their logo, it says since 1895. Great track record of business. How could a brand like that come up with anything to top what they already do? That's amazing, right? Do any of y'all follow their Facebook page? Anybody watch this Seedstock Super Puncher series that came out? If you haven't watched it, I totally encourage you to go to it because I thought this was so fun. And this was something that their son came up with, was like a sarcastic, funny YouTube video making fun of all of us people who like EPDs and spreadsheets. And I love it because it just shows that no matter if you've been ranching for nearly 200 years or you just started yesterday, you can make it yours and you can do cool things that are going to get people to notice you. So I've got 5 steps that I want to share with y'all about building a brand. And the first step is to have a brand that's actually worth talking about. Can anybody share a cool story about any of these companies? I mentioned Hobby Lobby out there. But if you do business with any of these businesses, probably you could tell me a personal story that one of these brands has made you feel valued, made you feel important, right? I had this, I'm going to give something away because Annie is in here, but Annie is my 6-year-old daughter. Her birthday was coming up, June 2nd, and she wanted a motorized ride-on car, right? So I ordered it from Amazon. Well, when it arrived, Annie's 6, but when it arrived, I thought it was a full-size car. It was really like this small. And I didn't look at the description. And this is like 3 days before her birthday. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what just happened? And I paid $200 for it. So it was clearly some type of scam that was going on Amazon. Well, when I contacted customer service, they told me, don't even return it. We're going to refund the money. We're going to get you the one that you want free. I was like, what? I don't even have to return it. And I'm getting to keep this little thing and you're getting me the one that I want. And I started reading online and turns out Amazon does stuff like that all the time because they care about their customers so much. Well, ranching is just the same. John mentioned this, we're here to serve a customer. And what are some things that make people think favorably of a ranching brand? Obviously, their cattle, quality of the cattle. Social responsibility. Do you support good causes? Do you support your junior programs? Do you have good animal welfare practices? How about the emotional appeal? It's no secret that the seed stock business is really a people business, right? You want to do business with people that you like and that share the same values with you, that are easy to work with. How does your brand treat their employees? Is it a good place to work? How is the financial performance of your company or your ranch? What are your sales averages? Are your prices, they have a lot of value? Are you kind of the high end of the market? And what is the vision and the leadership of your brand, past, present, and future? I also like to talk with clients and ask them, what is your brand focus? And generally, there's two types of brand focus. The first being a people-driven brand. So an example of that would be, say, like a ranch that has like a front man, that's the person that you always see, that you talk to. Maybe it's the person that shows their cattle at the shows. That's more of a people-driven brand. The product-driven brand would be exactly the opposite, where you're a brand that you're just focusing on the attributes of your cattle. Maybe you focus on carcass quality. Maybe you focus on like performance. Maybe it's pull, gentle dispositions, but what you're always pushing is the quality and the attributes of that animal. And that's great too. But I think the goal is to kind of be a little bit of both. Focus on the animal and the product primarily, but also bring in that people aspect so people get to know who they're working with. Step number 2 is to target the group of people that actually care about your product. And the best way to do this is to start by building personas. Is that a term that y'all are familiar with? In marketing, it's very, I see John shaking his head, in marketing, it's a very common tactic. But basically a persona is a semi-fictitious representation of your ideal customer. So you really actually market out, let's just say, we'll use a feed store, for example. One of their personas might be like Jim Bob Cowman, and he's like coming in every Saturday. He's buying a couple of sack bags of feed to take out to his ranch. He's going to buy a few little items. Like that's one persona. Maybe the other is Show Mom Sally, and she is inexperienced. She needs help. She needs direction. She wants to spend the best, or, buy the best feed she can for her show product. Well, those are two different personas. So basically, you write these out for your business, and the more detailed you can be, the better. So where are they from? How old are they? What do they like to do? And then once you have that, it's really helpful in marketing, actually. So an exercise that we do with a lot of our accounts is to start by mapping out the personas. And if you don't know how to start, this is a good way. This is just a sampling of one of the customers that we worked with, and we just pulled their QuickBooks reports for their top 10 biggest accounts, and then tried to start mapping these out. So you can see, like, we would have the amount spent, where they live, their age, family, single, and then aside from just the basic number data, what are some other things that they like? And you can see some things start popping up, like some of them like cattle, a lot of them like sports, there's a lot of families, and once you have this, you can start breaking down your customers into very specific small groups. Most ranches, when they really boil it down, they have 1 to 4 different personas, that it's the same target customer that they're serving over and over again. But again, this is different for every business. So, one example might be a beef producer who lives within 50 miles of you that's going to come buy a bull every year at your bull sale. How are you going to reach him? Well, you might reach him through a local radio ad, a regional newspaper ad, but do you think this guy is maybe going to see you like on the American Rancher? Maybe not. It might be a completely different audience. Or if your target persona is a 4-H member looking for a show heifer, how are you going to reach them? Again, totally different. So map those out and try to think of how you can best reach those people. And then it's also very important, I think, to not just serve your tribe, but to be in other people's tribes. And if that's my husband and little Annie on the riding on the back of the cow. And if you look on his cap, you see a brand. That brand is Ingram Angus, which we don't raise Angus, right? We raise Brahman. But my husband has worn the heck out of that cap so much that they sent him like a dozen more caps because he's in their tribe, right? And if anybody asks about, what's your cap? He's going to try to sell them an Angus bull and they're in Tennessee, but it's about being in other people's tribes. And we totally believe that this industry is big enough for everyone. So if you have the opportunity, share someone else's story too, and help other people in building their brand. So step 3 in building the brand is to craft the story and share the message that connects with the people that we just talked about, right? So you're building a brand that people believe in. You've targeted your customer and you know who you want to reach. Now you're creating the message that's going to connect with that customer. Take a minute and maybe think what would be the top 3 messages that you would want someone to think about when they think about your business. I mean, for me, I think Brahman cattle would be one of them. Maybe a family business would be another. Maybe carcass quality would be 3. I'm just tossing 3 out there. Think about what are those in your business. Then you want to go and ask yourselves, are the messages and the content that you're putting out consistent with what those 3 things are in your business? This is one of my customers in Texas, a OH Triangle Ranch. I just pulled the 4 most recent pictures from their Instagram. Looking at those 4, what would you say? What could you tell me about that brand? Okay, Hereford cattle. There's some history there because they've got a black and white photo. Cow calf, nice looking bull, right? You can tell a lot just by looking at their content. Well, here are their, I think they have 4 key messages, but here are their messages. 5th generation Texas ranchers where heritage is important. Do those pictures match that message? Absolutely. Raise quality seed stock Hereford cattle. Yep. Love sharing their way of life and day-to-day operations. Do those pictures convey that? For sure. I think that man tagging the Hereford calf, you can tell the love and the passion that he has in that. And then their 4th objective is bulls for sale private treaty. So again, bam, 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 they've hit all their objectives in just 4 pictures on their Instagram content. Okay, here's another one. If you pulled up this Instagram feed, what could you tell me about this operation? They raise Brahman cattle, right? Pretty nice Brahman cattle. All right, how about if we just switched out 3 pictures? Now what can you tell me about this operation? Family. They're diversified in their agriculture industries because they've got cattle, but then there's one picture of somebody standing in cotton. You still see the Brahman, but maybe you would think that maybe they raise commercial cattle too because they've got those black baldies in the lake. So really, you've got to be real in telling your story. Show who you are. This goes back to the people focus versus the product focus. And the most success is when you have a combination like this. So when I pulled up this Instagram feed, even if I didn't know these people out of the blue, I would instantly think like, they're cool. I like them. I'd want to go buy a calf from them. I trust them. So this brings up the question, what do people want to see from ranches? What are the messages people want to hear? Okay, 73% of social media users want to see pictures about your ranch in real life. What's happening? 70% said they like to see what you have for sale. 60% like to say industry breaking news. What do people not want to see? They don't really want to see pictures of your travel, unless you're coming to a place like this. They don't really want to see recipes, and they don't really want to see home decor or fashion. I think sometimes that's kind of tempting. So this is my own Instagram feed. I think these are like 12 of our recent pictures, just to show you a sample of what we put out there. And I'm going to show you the most popular ones, the best performing ones that came up. It's a little blurry. But out of all the pictures that I had posted, some of my kids, some of Brandon, some of family life, these 4 are the ones that got the most interaction. What does that boil back down to? Ultimately, the product, right? People want to see pictures of your cattle. They want to see what you're doing and what type of cattle you raise. So step 4 in building a brand would be spreading the word and advertising. And to me, this is where it gets kind of fun because this is where you can really get your message out there, right? And promote what you have, share your story. So this is the Ag Marketing Foundation. sorry, normally when I do the slides, they pop in, but for some reason the transitions aren't coming in today. But for any successful ag marketing brand, you've got to start with a good product backed by good people. And then after you have that, you want to focus on your business name and your brand. Once the business name and brand is in place, then you need these 4 basic elements of building the brand, which are colors, slogan, logo, and good photography. Then the next layer after that would be to focus on building your website. And then once your website is done, you want to supplement the website with Facebook, print advertising, and email marketing. But I do highlight the website because to me, the website really is the core advertising asset that any business owns compared to everything else. And you might be asking, well, why is that? Like, why is the website most important? Well, the website is the material that you own. You control the content 100%. You have no limitations. I mean, you could have a 500-page website out there if you wanted to. And the key with your website is your goal is you want to capture the contact information from people who are interested in your product. And you can do that through like a newsletter form, a catalog request, things like that. All of your other entities should be working with the objective to drive people to your website. And then more specifically, once they get onto your website, to connect with you, preferably through email, so you can get them in your system. So this is really the advertising foundation. Okay, so I've got a couple of tips that I share before we really talk about like ad spending and things like that. The first one is to build your brand in a very intentional way, even if you're starting small. And I think that's really important because sometimes people make the mistake of thinking, well, I'm just getting started. Like maybe my first ad doesn't have to be great, but I'll just get something out there and kind of get the wheels going. But really, you should be very, very precise and very intentional in everything that you put out from day one. I share our beef business as an example because I'm just going to be honest. The goal of our beef business, although it's small right now, our ultimate goal is to get it in a grocery store like H-E-B, right? That would be the dream if we could have Brahman beef in H-E-B. And in everything that we do, we ask ourselves, if the CEO of H-E-B saw this, would he want to carry our brand? And Brandon usually does a little Facebook Live at Farmers Market every week, kind of talking about what we're doing. And before we start that Facebook Live, and I turn on the camera, I always say, now remember, Brandon, you're talking to the CEO of H-E-B here, you know, because that's what we want. And every single thing that we're doing is really building toward that goal. So maybe your goal is, you know, to sell 200 bulls a year in your ranch. Everything you do should then be answering that question of, you know, is this going to help us sell 200 bulls a year? The second thing I want to share as like an advertising tip is to not to be afraid to change things up on the fly until you get things the way you want. And I know that sort of contradicts what I just said, but if you're building a new brand, sometimes it's hard to like make that commitment to be like, yes, this is my logo. You know, you might want to see like 25 proofs on the logo before you can actually say, yep, that's it. That's the one I'm choosing. But sometimes you need to make those choices and then be willing to change if it's not working. So that was our first logo that we created literally one day into our business, right? We didn't quite like it because you can see the brand, but it's supposed to be a B and a C and you really can't see it, right? So then we changed because we weren't sure people could see it. And we also thought BR Cutrer was a long name. So we changed to BRC. Then we changed it to that. Then we changed it to that. And now the big logo, about 18 months in, this is what we have officially settled in on our official logo. And I know it just looks like a logo, but there's a lot of kind of objectives going into that. And if you kind of look at the transition, it makes sense. But number one, we were starting with needing to promote our new brand that would be on the cattle, right? That nobody would know that. So we wanted the brand to be an important element, but we also wanted people to know that we raise Brahman cattle. So you weren't getting that from these other logos, but we also needed people to know our name, right? So it took us a little bit of transition to get where we are, but finally we made it. And don't be afraid to scrap things and make changes along the way. And then also, John just gave a great talk about, you know, analytics and metrics and things like that. And I think as ranchers, we all embrace that. I mean, we all measure our conception rate, our weaning rates, our ratios, all of that. But sometimes we overlook the importance and the power of those metrics in marketing. And I want to encourage you to be as spreadsheet focused in your marketing as you are in your production. So for example, set some social media goals. I mentioned that we started with 0 followers, right? And I had a goal that I wanted to have over 100,000 social media followers, right? So 0 to 100,000, no biggie, right? But the way we went about that goal is I literally made a spreadsheet week by week by week of what it was going to take me to get to that goal in less than a year. I had said I wanted to hit 100,000 before the Houston Livestock Show. And every week I checked that benchmark, and I saw I had it calculated that I need to gain X number of followers every week. And if I made a post, and let's just say like one post went viral and it got me 2,000 followers in 1 week, then I thought to myself, what was that post? Like, why did it connect so well? And how can I repeat that over and over again to reach that benchmark? And actually today we've got 130,000 social media followers that we built in, 18 months. But we built it through analytics and metrics and following up. Do the same thing for your sales inquiries, your website. We have a goal at our branch that we want to get 9 email inquiries per week. And actually we've tracked this, that like, I know how many head we need to sell a year. I know what our conversion rate is. So I know I've got to have 9 new people or new sales inquiries per week to help me meet that goal. And these are really, really good to use. And I think just another kind of component that you can bring in along with all the other things that you're analyzing in your business. Another important tip is when you start advertising is to find your niche. I think it's tempting to be like, oh, my target customer is, the world. Well, that is your target customer, but if you can take more of a shotgun approach compared to a rifle approach of just reaching the entire world, you can actually be a lot more successful, because a narrow market is going to mean less competition and more focused on your strengths and that target persona that you want to reach. Remember the law of duality. That's one of the basic marketing principles. John probably knows it. Anybody else in here know that? So what it means is there's 22 laws of marketing, that if you take marketing class, these are the 22 laws you're going to learn. One of those is called the law of duality. And what it means is that no matter what industry or what business you're in, ultimately, when people think of a certain product category, they're going to have 2 brands that come to mind. So if I were to say, hey, let's go grab a burger for lunch tomorrow, a fast food burger, where are we going to go? She said Whataburger. Most people are probably going to think McDonald's or Burger King, right? Or if I were to say, oh, Brandon, let's remodel our patio this weekend and we need to go get some supplies for that, where should we go? Lowe's or Home Depot, right? And essentially every market comes down to that, even if it's, hey, I need to buy a Brahman bull for my Angus cows. People are going to think of 2 brands that come to the top. But your market doesn't have to be, Angus bulls. It could be very specific. It could be Angus bulls in Texas or commercial Angus bulls in Illinois. The trick here is that you want to define your market in at least 4 words. And research has found that if you can define that market into 4 words, you can be very, very successful in, achieving that law of duality in that portion of the market and, hitting your sales goals. So a good example of the 4 words would be, here's one of my clients that I work with in Alabama. Originally, he came to me and he said, I want to be the #1 site on Google that comes up when someone searches Wagyu beef. Okay, everybody does, right? That's not possible at this point. If someone says, I want to be the #1 site that comes up when someone searches Hereford cattle, you as a producer are likely not going to be able to get that spot. But whenever he said, okay, I want to be the #1 site that comes up for farm to table Wagyu beef in North Alabama, 100%. I can get that in a very short amount of time. It's very achievable because we have a very specific targeted goal that we're trying to reach. Okay. Another question I get a lot in building the brand is, how much is it going to cost me to build this brand? Like, how much money do I need to allocate into building this brand? There really isn't a specific answer to this, but I would say if you're within the first 1 or 2 years of your business, you need to allocate at least $5,000 into building the assets of your brand. And the assets I would say would be your logo, building a website, growing your Facebook page, which may need some paid advertising, establishing your name recognition, running some ads in your breed publication, things like that. You're going to have to invest a lot in that initially, just so people start seeing the brand and start recognizing it. Once you have passed that little initial startup phase, it's a good recommendation to allocate 1 to 3% of your gross sales back into the business to continue to promote and advertise the brand. So what does that look like? Here's an example of what we do in our business. And I'm not saying ours is, perfect by any means, but our objective would be, our goal is to market, 200 head of registered seed stock a year. In order to do that, this is what we do. We have a monthly ad in our breed publication that we run every single month. To us, that's super, super important, being in that breed publication. Then in addition to that, we also run other ads in that magazine, if we have a sale coming up or things like that. We have an excellent website. Our goal is to keep it updated weekly. We produce 2 40-page sale catalogs a year, and we mail them out because I still think direct mail is really important. We do an annual herd reference guide. We do an episode on American Rancher. We try to have a daily post on Facebook and Instagram, billboards, trade shows, lots of stuff like that. So this is what works for us. This is our plan. I also share one of my best friends in the Brahmin business who's also really, really successful. And if you look at his plan, it's pretty much complete opposite of ours. So I share that because, what works for me or what works for someone else doesn't mean that's the standard, right? So this is Stuart's brand. His primary driver of sales is travel, which isn't any type of form of advertising. It's him going and personally visiting ranches. He does a lot of international travel. His objective is to make a personal connection. This would be an example, maybe more of the person-driven brand versus the product-driven brand. He does run an ad in our breed publication, but not very often. Maybe after the show, if he's done well, or if he has a sale. He doesn't even have a ranch social media following. Nothing for his ranch. Everything he does is under his own page, under his own name, first name Stewart, last name Watkins, which is, again, very non-traditional. He has a website. He hasn't updated it in 3 years. He doesn't do a printed catalog. He just puts an online sale up. He does do email blasts. He does do Facebook, and personal contacts is really the driver of his business. So you can see one end of the spectrum to the other. Find that niche that works for you and what's going to connect with your personas. The only caveat I do share with that, and I love print advertising, I'm a huge, huge believer in that, but after COVID, digital is now the first preferred method of advertising. Everything is online. People are researching online, they're shopping online. Oh, now my transitions works. And the good thing about this new digital first is that basically you can get a lot of new customers. Location is really important, where before location wasn't maybe as important, but people are shifting back to the buy local movement. They want to buy from people around them, and your location is really important. And then finally, brand loyalty is gone. COVID just completely shook all that up. People are more open than ever to doing business with new ranches, new businesses, especially if it's someone that they connect with, their visions, connect with their game plan. So the opportunity is wide open for new brands that are doing it right. Also want to share that social media really can make the world your stage. And by now, everybody talks about social media all the time. I'm not going to get too much into that. Most recent stats showing that, the popularity of these outlets, these are the most common ones here. The 2 that I recommend the most would be Facebook, number 1, because it's a low-cost option, and you can get that personal interaction of your friends sharing with other friends. And then the second one I would focus on would be Instagram. Again, it's another low-cost option, and you can attract new customers here through hashtags and your location. So if you're not doing social media and you want to start, I would start with Facebook. If you are currently doing Facebook and you want to expand, I would expand into Instagram as well. Then another question we get is, How often should I post on Facebook, right? Do any of y'all feel that? Like the struggle of you're like, oh, I need to make a post, but I don't know what to post. That happens all the time. So here's the metrics. It's not what you think. It's not more is better, so to speak. The answer depends on your audience. So take a look at your own page and see how many fans you have. If you have less than 1,000 followers, then your recommendation is to post 1 to 3 posts a week. 1,000 to 10,000 followers, then you need to do 3 to 7 posts a week. And if you have more than 10,000 followers, then that's when you are needing to do nearly daily updates of 5 to 12 posts a week. And I have these numbers on the side because that sounds great, like I need 7 posts a week, right? But when you think about that on an annual basis, that's a lot. So even if you're doing the bare minimum, which is 1 to 3 posts a week, that means you're going to need to have 50 to 150 unique photos, unique content ideas to put up to keep your audience engaged. And that's a lot. So you just need to plan for that. Same for Instagram. How often should you post on Instagram? For a business page, it's recommended that you post 1 to 3 times a day on your news feed or your story. So it's a combination of both. What we usually do is 1 on our post, our news feed, and then a couple on our story to keep it engaged. But the key here is to keep your engagement rates up and to be consistent. So if you're not good at Instagram and you cannot commit to doing, 1 post a day, it's better to consistently do 1 post per week, week after week after week, rather than to try to come in on Sunday night when you're sitting at home watching TV and make 20 posts back to back. Like that's not going to hit the numbers. So consistency on Instagram is more important than quantity. In both of these, to me, the key here is good photography is going to drive sales and exposure, and it's that simple. I had those little numbers, but if you think about it and your goal is to do daily posts that are different on Facebook and Instagram, which is currently what we're at, you're going to need over 700 photos per year. And that doesn't mean that you have to have a professional photographer come out, but it means that you're going to need to get that camera out and take some pictures and build a photo database and have it ready. That's a great photo, right? This is what was actually happening in that photo. And I share that because, again, in social media, expectations versus real life are totally different, right? It takes a little planning. It might take a little time. It may take a team of 5 people helping you get this done, but by working together, you can get it done. So the last step in building a great brand is to show up consistently, regularly, generously, and frequently, over and over and over again. I really believe that it's great to invest money in advertising, but never without some type of checking on, is your advertising work? So I always want to backtrack after I spend any dollar in advertising and see, did I get new clients from this? Did it generate sales? Here are some ways to check that. Number 1, track your average sales prices. Like, can you see an increase over the years as you've been focused more on marketing? Track the number of head you sell, your conversion rate, the number of inquiries. Track your website analytics. Let's say you decide to put $10 on a Facebook boosted post. Well, then go back a week later and check and see, did you notice a big spike in your website traffic? Like, see if it's actually working. What keywords are people using to find you? And use that to your advantage to just keep building and building and building on that. And then finally, look at your Facebook analytics. In the Insights tab, it will give you a breakdown of percentage male, female fans, their location, their age. Go back and see if that matches those personas that we talked about in step 2. And if it doesn't, maybe you can tweak it a little bit. And it can help you see if you're missing any personas. So this is me and Brandon. This was us, 2 Texans. I don't know if anybody might recognize where we are just from that photo, but 2 Texans living in South Texas, Brahman breeders. We thought it would be fun to go to the SAV Angus sale. And so we bundled up, we went, we're nobodies there. We were standing out in the pens looking at these bulls, and the owner of that ranch came and talked to us in the pens. He stopped and he was like, "Hi, I'm Kelly Schaff. I'm the owner of this ranch. Like, can I help y'all? What are we looking for?" We were flabbergasted. I'm just going to be honest, because we're nobodies, right? But from that moment, we really became huge fans of their business and really just the hospitality of the Angus breed, because nobody cares how much you know until you show them how much you care, right? And that's one of the best things that I can say about building a brand is share your passion, share your love, be open with people to tell them about your ranch and your story and your history and how much it means to you, because that's what's going to connect with people in a major way. A lot of people also ask in the seed stock business, like, what's the secret to success? And if I asked any rancher out there, how do you get to be the best seed stock ranch in the world? I think about half of the people would say, oh, you've got to have good herd bulls. Man, the power is in the bulls, right? People would hear that. But then the other half of the people would probably come and say, nope, the secret's in the cows. I believe in those cow families, line breeding to cow families. That's the way to be successful in the seed stock business. Heard that one, right? Both of those are wrong. The secret to being a success in the seed stock business is each of you. It's in what's in your hearts, in your mind, the passion that you have, and your ability to share that with others. So go out, build that brand, share that story, and make a difference, because I know that you can do it. I know you have it in you. Thank you for letting me be here today, and I'll answer any questions if anybody has any. If not, I'll stick around in the back. Yes, that's a great question. So the first question was, Facebook and Instagram are owned by each other, or Facebook owns both of those entities now. And when you are scheduling posts in Facebook, by default, they're going to ask you, do you want to share this to Instagram as well? It's like a little slide over button. And I know most of the time you're thinking, well, this is easy. I'll just knock them out both at one time. The problems with that, the first one would be hashtags, because hashtags are favored on Instagram, but they are not favored on Facebook. And you can put them on Facebook, but it's not a best practice. So if you're sharing that content, then you're going to have to decide, well, do I want to forego the hashtags and make it like content accepted for both? Or do I want to put the hashtags on Facebook and look dumb? So I don't, not look dumb, but not follow the best practice. So that's one of the reasons to keep it separate. And the second would be engagement, because a lot of your followers and your fan base do overlap. And so if they are always wanting fresh content. So if they see something on Facebook and then they slow the Facebook scroll, move to Instagram, and they see the exact same picture, it's almost a detriment. It works against you. But that doesn't mean you can't work around it. So what I do is I basically use the same photo library for both, but I space it out. So if I post a picture of a bull on Facebook, I might wait literally a month and then post it on Instagram. So I am doubling up on the content, but on a long enough period to where it's not going to seem like it's the repetitive content over and over. And then the difference on stories and the post. So Instagram favors the stories, the little buttons at the top. The reason for that is because it's their way to compete with Snapchat. So, the disappearing photos and things like that. So the posts are really good on the story on Instagram. Probably do, 3 to 5 of those a day, and then just one news feed post. The little stories are not as popular on Facebook, but they're still useful. It's hard to keep up with all that, isn't it? And it changes like every week. So it's hard to stay on top of all that. Yeah, that's great. So when I actually started my own Facebook following with a 0 fan base, the way we probably got our first 2,000 fans was just from friends. And I was just using that basic feature of go and invite your friend. And the good thing about that is it's free. And also the good thing about that is people are probably going to accept your invitation to like your page. And so if you want to grow your Facebook following right now, don't be afraid to use that. Like literally sit here in this session and invite every single person to like your page. And that'll probably give you a 10% boost right there. And then partnering with other pages is a good way to get your name out there, but it's probably not going to result in a huge spike of traffic, because essentially the only exposure you're going to get is them tagging you. So what you're hoping is that someone will see your name tagged and then click on your page and like it. So it is that's called an organic growth method. It's meaning it doesn't cost you anything. If you are looking to grow a fan page exponentially and fast, paid advertising is probably the best way to do that, but it may not get you the most quality likes, but at least would get you vanity likes. So you could say, oh, I got 1,000 new fans this week. Yeah. On my own operation, I probably spend, well, we have a team approach. So I will say my husband is the main driver in our content because he's the photographer. But surprisingly, 95% of the photos that he takes are just taken on his camera phone. So you don't have to have a professional, and you don't have to have a fancy photographer, so he knows his assignment is, I want you taking pictures all the time of everything you could possibly take. And then usually once a week, we sit down together and I'll go through his phone and just text the pictures to myself. And then I try to schedule a week in advance on Facebook. So I usually sit down maybe one morning a week, and I'll pre-schedule our content for a week out, and then do it the next week. Because you could pre-schedule indefinitely if you wanted, but sometimes things just aren't current, and it loses its appeal. So I never like to really schedule more than a week out. And then on Instagram, I do it daily. I just have a reminder to myself, because on Instagram, if you do schedule, your boosts tend to not go as viral, or not be seen as much. So I just do it usually first thing in the morning, pop out my phone and pick a picture and post it up there. And that's kind of the recipe that works for us. So a team approach. My daughter is actually probably more adept at some forms of social media than I do, and she's 10. She started a TikTok for us, and I was like, go right ahead. That's great. Involve every person on your team, no matter how old or young they are. I think everybody can contribute in a positive way, especially in social media. So that's a challenge as well. On Facebook, it's pretty easy because you can just put the link straight up. And usually on Facebook, it will automatically detect a link and even give a little preview that looks really nice. And that's really good. The only tool sometimes we use on Facebook is a service called Bitly. I don't know if you've seen that, but it is a way to shorten links and also track the link. So if you're wanting to know how many people, like if you post your bull sale catalog and you want to know how many people specifically saw that on Facebook and clicked to your website, then you would do that through the Bitly service. It's free. It's BITLY. And you put in your link, they give you a specific code, and then you can track it. And that's really nice. Posting links on Instagram is a little bit more of a challenge, and I don't necessarily think there's a perfect way. Feel free if somebody else wants to share me, you can put your link in your bio. I don't really think many people are contacting or doing that actually, but you cannot currently put a link in Instagram as a caption right now. So the best option is to put a link in bio, or maybe try to put a text overlay on your graphic that might have your website and hope that they'll go there. Thank y'all very much. I really enjoyed it.